Hello, it's Captain Jim here aboard the Monopoly Project yacht for our monthly book reviews. We're on Bell Vista Lakes. Every successful real estate investor has a yacht, and this is the Monopoly Project yacht. Unfortunately, it's the Bikini Girl's day off, and so you just have me. And you can see I'm wearing my new wireless microphone. So today we have 5 books to review. 4 are about the history of Phoenix, and 1 is about real estate investing. So we're going to jump right into it right now. Okay, it's Jim back again for Monopoly Project Floating Book Review. It's April here on Bell Vista Lakes, and we're on the Monopoly Project yacht. Of course, every successful real estate investor has a yacht, and this is ours. Unfortunately, it's a Bikini Girl's day off, so you just have me here on the yacht. And we're reviewing books from April. We just went through the 4 picture books on Phoenix history, but our next book is One Rental at a Time by Michael Zuber. And this is a book on basically a monopoly project that he and his wife did, actually starting a little after us and finishing a little before. And it's one of my, and maybe it is my favorite book on this whole genre of getting rich in real estate, the monopoly project type thing of buying investment, single family home investment properties. And so it's 168 pages. This paperback was written in 2019 by Michael Zuber. I like it not because it's better than the others or more complete than the others. In fact, in some ways, I like it because it's not as complete, but because it's relatable. It's an everyday story, and I'll give you a few comments. And what it doesn't do, it doesn't have a lot of checklists. It doesn't have a lot of talk about how to do mortgages and evaluate rental properties and income and all those kind of things. It's more a story of how he and his wife went through this process, sort of accidentally, like us. Wasn't a plan, a big plan that was destined to succeed. It was just, they made it up as they go along, and in fact, he even talks about it. And what the 2 things that I immediately like that I've mentioned before is, one, he doesn't say stuff like buy it at 20% less than full market value, like you see in almost every other of these books. And second is, he doesn't say you need a team, and he doesn't go through these big checklists on, how do you get a mortgage and how do you do all these things. It's just more a story. And in fact, on page 7, and I got a lot of notes, so I'm probably not going to go through them. I got 11 pages of notes, so I'm certainly not going to go through all those. But on page 7, he admits up front it's not a get rich quick story, and I'm not trying to sell you training or stuff like that. Although a little at the end of the book, he sort of contradicts that. And he says it's a story of just one investor over 15 years. And he says when he started, he had no idea of how long it was going to take. One interesting thing on page 8, he says he couldn't find any books about real estate investors who had done this, but the ones that he could find were pushing an agenda. And I understand what he's saying, but there are a lot of books. The Millionaire Next Door is the one that immediately comes to mind that falls into this category. On page 10, he says the most important thing before you get started is to get your spouse on board. And I absolutely 100% agree with that. You have to be in total sync with your spouse or whoever's significant in your life, not just in terms of financial situation, but also what's your goals in life? Where do you want to be? What do you want to do? Do you want to be an entrepreneur? Do you want to make a lot of money? Do you want to just have a 9-to-5 job and enjoy life? I mean, there's lots of choices that aren't financial initially. They're cultural and lifestyle. And so I think it is important. He dismisses flipping as a full-time job, and of course that's true, and it requires a lot of capital. He mentions the 1% rule, which is a real estate rule that is probably not true anymore, but in the past, if you could rent a property for 1% of your purchase price, you would probably be okay in terms of making money. And then on page 19, he discusses this thing I mentioned just now, is that you don't need a system. He says he purchased all of his properties out of the MLS he and his wife were in the San Francisco Bay Area, and they decided to go ahead and try and buy properties to rent them out. And of course, in the Bay Area, then as of now, you can't make any money. It's all negative cash flow. And so what he ended up doing is going to Fresno, which is like probably 3 or 4 hours drive. He wanted someplace relatively close. This was in 2005, right? And so he did start finding a lot of properties. It was just before the crash, and he mentions the crash. And the interesting thing in his story on page 25, he says he rented his first property for $1,095 a month. The guy paid, and then he never paid again. And it took him 3 weeks to get rid of the guy. And so anyway, he then goes on, and I don't want to, like I said, go through all these notes because it's way too much. For just to give you an idea of whether the book is worth reading, and it absolutely is if you're interested in the Monopoly Project type activity. He mentions 80-10-10 loans. That was the old days. You can't get that. You put 80% down, you got a 10% second. You put 10% down, you got a 10% second, and you get an 80% loan from a conventional bank. That's sort of gone away. We actually bought a commercial property on that, owner-occupied commercial property. And then, in fact, he goes on. He initially starts buying single-family homes, and then he realizes that he's better off in multiplexes. And he starts buying units, 8, 10 units, 12. That is the Monopoly Project model. And one of the things there's a couple of things that you're interested. He doesn't seem to understand is why are interest rates and low downs for owner-occupied houses so low? And of course, that's because they're non-recourse loans, and they're basically guaranteed by the government. And he does mention that this is like a 20-year project, and he explicitly says on page 34 that staying on task for 20 years is hard, especially the first 5 or 10. And he's absolutely right about that. That's why most people either flunk out of a Monopoly project or don't even try it. After he bought his first house, he bought 5 more, which is pretty much similar to what we did. But then he started buying, 5 to 10 unit places, and he said it was ripe for deal making. Well, that's certainly not true in Phoenix now. I'm not sure how true it is in Fresno or even Bakersfield, where we're looking at. And then he wonders why 4 is considered residential and 5 is considered commercial. And of course, that's just the differentiation of the government guaranteeing owner-occupied loans of those with less than 4 units through the Fannie Mae and Sallie Mae and all that. So, not that it takes away from the value of the book. It's just interesting. And I'm coming out of under the bridge, so I can actually read my notes. He mentions that prices doubled, but rents were flat. And of course, that's true. Rents always lag way behind prices, but eventually they catch up. And then page 64, he comes back to this theme of he didn't have any inside information. He didn't have a team of accountants and lawyers and all that thing that a lot of these books tell you. That he just got it out of the MLS. And so that was good. He talks about hard money lenders, and so he went from 5 units. I mentioned he bought 1, and then he bought 4 more, to 175 in 4 years. I'm sorry. Yeah, I think in 4 years, in different cycles. And he actually has a list, and I'll try and put it up in the video review, a list of his current holdings, what those 175 units consist of. Like I said, I like this book, even though it's not the standard model, and you can see my notes right here at the top of the page. Is the standard RE, retire early book consists of a motivational section, a checklist, and then the rules of how to do it and how you have to have a team and everything. And basically, this book is only the motivational section. And again, on page 104, he goes back to that concept idea that it'll take years and seems like nothing is happening for years. And that's certainly true. You're just wondering whether you're wasting your time while you hear all your friends are going on these fancy, trips and cruises and this and that, and spending all their money on cars and all that stuff while you're just sitting there taking care of rental properties. But that basically disqualifies almost everybody from doing these kind of things. Just making sure I'm still recording. And then with page 106, he starts 21 key topics, and maybe this is a checklist type thing. And basically he talks about that. And he actually retired, and this is where he does start selling products. He's got a YouTube channel where he has 10,000 subscribers, I think. And so he is selling this stuff, and he's got a program called the 6 and 20% program, which I guess you get 20% equity and 6% return or something like that. Page 155 has 11 key ideas, and those are really worth reading. And one of the interesting things on page 158, 159, he says to maximize leverage. Virtually every book tells you to minimize leverage, i.e. how much money you put down. He says to maximize it because it reduces risk. And of course, the reason why the people who write these other books say to put minimum down or even zero down books is because most of the people who read these and buy these books and courses and everything don't have any money. So it's the only way you can sell them a dream is to say, well, you don't need any money. You don't need capital up front. You can just, get a zero down situation and these kind of things. So I was really glad to see that he's not in that camp, because that's not real. And on page 160, he says inflation is your friend. And of course, that's the whole basis of the Monopoly Project, is you're borrowing at a fixed cost and an asset that's being increasing in value, mostly due to fiat inflation. And so in 162, he says we want to help people get to 4 properties, and that's his pitch. So, and 163, the middle class buy depreciating assets, live beyond their means, and are broke at the end of the month. He's absolutely right about that. One interesting thing he says on 165 is I should have bought nicer buildings, and this is the Trump model, buying trophy properties. I understand what he's saying. You typically do want to buy nice properties. But on the other hand, there's a good argument that you want to buy a property in a good neighborhood where you're below the median. You don't want the best property in the neighborhood. And then, of course, he reminds us on 167 of what is absolutely true, is that most of the reader's main constraint is time, not money. You can always make more money, but you can't get any more time than God has allocated for you. So use your time wisely. And so anyway, Michael Zuber, we're running out of time. I strongly, strongly, strongly recommend this book. And that is our Monopoly Project floating book review for early April. And we will get back to you next month. Thank you for listening.